I think we caught a couple. Okay, we are live. All right. Jessica, it's so nice to have you here. I'm going to share my screen really quick because as people jump on, always want to explain. Hold on one second. There we go. Nope. Sorry, everyone. Just one second. Okay. I'm just going to do it this way. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Female Mentor Conversations this week. We're so thrilled to have you to talk about nice girls at work. As every week, this is around giving women platforms to talk about what they're experts at, what they have learned over the years in their professional lives to share with others. And it's great conversation for both men and women. So if you have friends that you think would benefit from this conversation later, please share it with them. And I'm sorry about my rough PowerPoint, but for some reason my screen share wasn't working. So don't forget to like and subscribe so that we can keep bringing these conversations to you for free. And just a quick reminder, there's that beautiful red button. So click subscribe. If you do subscribe, you can chat and share any comments or questions with us throughout the session. We'll try to address those as we have time. And then go ahead and set reminders for future and upcoming conversations. So this is brought to you by Her Career Studio, my passion project to mentor and coach women early in their careers. If you identify as one of those women or you're making a big transition, please check it out, hercareerstudio.com, or share with someone you know in that position. And it is an online career coaching and mentorship program. All right, with all of that said, I'm so thrilled to introduce my guest, Jessica. We have known each other a little over a year now, both career coaches and network together. And we also did some life coaching work together as well. And so when I was planning out this schedule, I thought, oh, Jessica would be perfect to talk to about anything and everything around women at work. So Jessica, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody how you got into coaching?
Oh gosh, that's a long story, but okay. So I'm a career coach in San Francisco. And first of all, I just want to say I'm so excited to be here. I feel like I'm about to burst open with I've been wanting to talk about this topic for so long. I'm a career coach in San Francisco. I work with both men and women. I work with people usually around mid-career and people who are like managers trying to get into a little bit of the higher echelon, but kind of struggling to break through. I got into career coaching because, well, honestly, it was such an accident. I knew that I loved helping people with their careers. It would just be something that if I had an opportunity, I would probably try to help somebody, even though they didn't really ask for help. I'm like, I want to help you. And then I saw a post on Facebook about a career coaching program, and I just like the skies parted. The clouds parted, the skies didn't part, the clouds parted. Whatever. It was just that the birds were chirping and singing and everything. And I knew that it was what I wanted to do. And I've been doing that ever since. And this is my 3-year anniversary this month. This is my 3-year anniversary. So yeah, I had no idea going into this that I would be here 3 years later. So
congratulations. That's such a milestone, having your own business for 3 years. Like that's a big one.
I know. So many businesses fail in the first year, right? You hear that all the time. And I think year 3 is kind of like that really special time when you've got a lot of stuff figured out already. You're not like bumbling through all the little things here and there, systems figured out and everything. And you kind of know what you want. And then you just like take what you've learned and run with it. So I'm really excited to be at this phase.
All right, here we go. We're going to get right into it. Okay. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. We're both identify as nice girls.
Yes. Which can mean different things to different people.
Absolutely. So why don't we start with that? What is kind of your definition behind this topic and where we want to hone in today?
Yeah. Well, my definition, because it's not like the opposite of nice. Nice is mean. Like, it's not about being mean or not nice, which is more of a personality trait. It's really about what you're motivated by. So being a nice girl to me is when you give beyond your capacity, when you give beyond your comfort level, when you say yes when you really want to say no, when you feel sort of like almost like there's a compulsion to be pulled into other people's orbits to rescue them or to make their problems your problems. And that is difficult for you. Like, there's the difference is sometimes we're givers and it works great. We're in the right kind of environment. We give and it feels really good and we get something in return and it just feels like a good, comfortable environment. However, when it's sort of like, oh, it's almost like your very survival, the way that you feel inside, that your very survival relies on the fact that you need to be that person. That's when being a nice girl can pose a lot of challenges in the workplace and anywhere, dating, family, friends, anywhere, grocery store.
Right. So sometimes people use the phrase people pleaser. And I will tell you, when that first came up in my career, I rejected that notion. I was like,
I did too.
No. Did you too?
I absolutely did. Somebody told me that they were a people pleaser and I was like, huh. Yeah, I was like, what is that? I don't know.
Right. I like how you describe more like a giver and nurturer, maybe. Mm-hmm. So also, this is definitely a subject that transcends gender. We are talking specifically to women today because that is the primary audience. But yeah, I've had men that have worked for me and with me that also have this challenge of a balance between being assertive or setting boundaries versus just feeling almost like bulldozed sometimes, I guess could be one way to describe it.
You know, I think that I agree 100%. I've worked with men as clients who have these traits. It's not necessarily something that only one gender experiences. However, I think that there are certain things about women where it's kind of like there's a cultural pressure, societal pressure to be nice. There is a societal pressure to be good, to be well behaved. You get rewarded for niceness sometimes as a woman, which I think is kind of a double-edged sword, because sometimes in the workplace you don't get rewarded for being nice, but just societally we ostracize women who are very boundaried, who know themselves, who act in accordance with their, with like their deep internal core of who they are. And sometimes that is criticized. So we kind of see these examples as women to kind of show up a certain way in the world and in so many different contexts. And I think that for me, like it showed up in dating contexts a lot for me way back in the day. I've been with my partner for over 10 years now. So it's been a long time since I've been there, but I remember what that was like as a nice girl who was not very boundaried, who just kind of went with the flow. And that wasn't great. It wasn't very powerful for me in relationship.
Yeah. So let's talk. Obviously, we all love our nice girls because we need them. We need to, we need them in the world, just in general. Where does it show up when it becomes maybe a hindrance or something where you find you might need to make a change? You might need to set more boundaries. Yeah. What are the signs and symptoms you've seen for women at work?
I think a big one is resentment. Like when you start to feel that a lot of these resentments are piling up because you have been giving and you're not getting that recognition and reward. I think that there's like when you also feel, like I said before, like your survival depends on it, as if like you have no choice. You are compelled beyond your logic when it's like you're in that autopilot, when somebody, I think about like, okay, so somebody comes to you at work and they say, oh, hey, can you tell so-and-so something about this project or deliver this message? And the nice girl wants to be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll see them later and I'll tell them your message, that kind of thing. When it could actually be something different, like, oh, well, why don't you tell them that message that you like? Why do I need to be the middleman? You kind of find yourself being that sort of go-to person. You're so reliable in that way. Sometimes you become people's shoulder to cry on. You take on a lot of the emotional labor of the team. Sometimes you take on the work labor, like you do a lot of invisible work and it doesn't get seen, it doesn't get rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
When you find that you're not finding, the growth that you're looking for. So if you want to be on a growth trajectory, you want to excel in your career, you want to get that promotion, but you just kind of stagnate, but you're like, I'm doing all this work. How can I possibly be stagnating if I'm doing all of this work? How come nobody is seeing this work?
Right.
Because a lot of it is invisible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The phrase that keeps coming to mind for me too is being taken advantage of.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that is a big one.
Mm-hmm. And I would love to ask the listeners that are on if they have any signs and symptoms or quick stories they want to put in the chat. I would love to see what your take is on kind of the definition of nice girl and why. For instance, why are you listening today? What is it that's going on in your work world or has happened to you? Let us know, and then we could definitely react to that and empathize.
Well, I'm really looking forward to see what people say too. It's probably a lot more prevalent than we like to think, because I think that we get a lot of cues out there about how to not be so nice, like how to set boundaries. So, set the boundary, say no, which is great. It's really, really awesome to be able to say no. The other thing too is that sometimes when we say no, it's because of other things, like we have too much on our plate. We feel taken advantage of, right? So we may not want to say yes to something because we feel like it's going to just be another opportunity to be taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. Somebody has used, you feel used. And why would I do this thing to not get recognized or get that reward? So I think that one of the things that we could talk more about this later, but one of the things is to learn is how to negotiate the yes.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. And I would love we'll get into also kind of phrasing and how we can use the words that are powerful, but not. I had on her career studio, which I mentioned at the beginning, for women early in their careers, we talked about this subject yesterday, kind of priming for today's conversation. And I asked the ladies on the call, can you give me examples? When does this come up for you? Because of course, the women I work with are very nice women and they're also going places, but trying to figure out how to set boundaries and how to say no in a way that feels authentic and true to yourself. But the phrase that kept coming up, but doesn't portray you as a bitch. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So for some reason, culturally, like you mentioned, we've got these two ends of the spectrum that we tend to put people into buckets of. You're either a bitch or you're really nice.
Yeah.
So what my question back to them too, and I'd love to hear your response to this is that your own internal monologue telling you that's how you will be perceived? Or did you actually have that feedback from others? Because a lot of times we project our own feelings into the world and it might manifest itself. But a lot of times that's not how other people are perceiving it, right? Mm-hmm. It's just our own internal bias. What was your response to that?
I think a part of where that comes from is, we're social creatures. We are social animals. Like our survival depends on our belonging. So I think that there's a strong internal driver that says, if I act this way, I will not belong. there's another way that we kind of think of it like this feeling of getting in trouble. Does that resonate with you at all? Like if you do something or you don't do something, you're going to get in trouble. I have that big time. And this is where I find a lot of my, I'm a recovering nice girl, people pleaser. And that's a big thing that I had to really face, is like that sort of feeling of getting in trouble. So I think that there is, there again, like societal messages, don't be a certain way. I think that for women, it's really tough. And I'm going to say for everyone, it can be tough when you're either this or that. It's on this spectrum. It's unfair because we're so, there's multitudes within us. We're not just one or the other thing. And I think that binary thinking is how we sort of operate within ourselves at times. That's how like the internal, that inner critic is kind of that judge that's saying like, it's either good or bad, right or wrong, yes or no, true or false. But actually it's not so much like that in the real world. So it's like, if you say this thing doesn't necessarily make you a bitch or whatever it is that your mind might be kind of telling you that you're going to be. And if you misstep, you can make up for it. You can, like, if you said something and it didn't land right, and you're like, actually, I just want to apologize. That's not exactly how I meant to say that, or how that came across. What I think I was afraid of was that my boundaries were being pressed. And I realized that that's actually not the case. So it was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. But you can make, like, if that ever happens, which it does all the time, and we always step in it, from time to time, but then you can really, like, that shows the vulnerability side of things. I think that it's really, really tough for us to be vulnerable.
Absolutely. I have so much to keep saying with you, but I do want to acknowledge that we've got some comments. So let me read. Gayla, thank you for sharing. Said, my manager likes it when we don't have anything to say. We just punch in and out, put in our 8-hour day. I feel like that a lot. Oh, and then she said a few minutes later, I feel like that a lot. I speak up and I feel like I'm going to end up walking on eggshells. Yeah. So definitely, Gayla, that's, I think what I learned throughout my career was when to speak up and when to kind of pick your battles. Right. And sometimes you have to just observe a lot in the culture that you're in within the organization. There also are these times where it's a double standard, where you're perceiving, and again, I will say, check your bias on this, because a lot of times it's our own bias. It's not anyone else's, where you observe that a man can just say no, not give an excuse, right? Women love to give excuses why they can't help, because they might feel guilty or feel pressured and then have to push back and create a boundary. So when a man just says, no, I can't help with that, okay, and move on, versus a woman who's maybe new to the team saying no, and here's why, and slewing out all the excuses or reasons. Check, is that because you have a bias that when a man says no, you respect it more than a woman? Or is this something that has shown up in your organization that you've observed it? So really checking our own biases versus what is culturally acceptable, I think helps people kind of navigate that, when to speak up, when not to.
It's totally brilliant. And it kind of goes back also to, like, what are the behaviors that are rewarded in your work culture and what are the behaviors that aren't? And it sounds like something that I wanted to mention that I was thinking about, because I follow this organizational psychologist, Adam Grant, who has a podcast, one called Taken for Granted. And he has this new book called Give and Take, and he talks about the givers and the takers, which I think is actually really, really apt thing to look into, especially if you're dealing with this kind of situation as a people pleaser, giver, nice girl. But one of the things is that the givers can be the most productive and successful people in the workplace, as long as they're in the right workplace. So sometimes you find yourself the way that you are naturally, your values are a mismatch for where you're like physically located at work.
Yes. Oh, and we're seeing that so much with the Great Resignation, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Yep. And
Yes, we
especially
are.
with how the pandemic affected women and moms who are caregivers at home. And then all of a sudden they have to be caregivers at work because that's just where they were put culturally within the organization. That's draining.
It really is. I see that a lot with teachers too.
Yes.
Teachers who have been doing it for so long, and they do it for the passion of it. They do it for, knowing that they're making such an impact on our up and coming generations. But there's not a lot of reward, I would say, in the school system. It's it is what it is. You only have so much room to grow.
Right. I think it's important to note too that your point about what's rewarded at work. And if you're looking to grow your career or even shift or change organizations, how do you set yourself up for success is a big question mark people have. And to your point, when a teacher goes out of their way and spends more money than they should on supplies, because personally they maybe can't afford it, or it's a stretch budget situation, who's going to thank you for that? Is it worth it? Right? That's one example. And then you go over to maybe a more corporate environment and you're the one who's always saying, okay, yeah, I'll take the meeting minutes, or I'll do this secretarial work, even though that's not your task or your role. Again, who's going to reward you for that? How is that going to help get you to the next step? A lot of times, just professionals, period, men and women, think my work should just be recognized, right? They should just see that I'm doing all of this work.
Yes.
Well, ladies, they're not going to. Let's just put it like you have got to document, you've got to show up in the conversation, put that leadership hat on. I also learned early in my career that, and I had staff that would work, team members that would work for me that would say, oh, I don't think I can speak up. I don't think I can tell people that that's not going to work. And I would ask, why is that? Have you seen someone else get punished for speaking up? Because my example at the time was I got promoted when I spoke up. And so like flipping that on its head. Now, did I speak up in a way that was inappropriate or disrespectful? Of course not. But I rose my hand and took those stretch assignments. And I said, here's a solution we could put towards this big problem. Not, hey, I'll take the meeting minutes, or I'll go over here and organize an event. Those weren't the things I was doing. I was running the business, like the return on the investment in me, right? I was building the revenues. I was producing those numbers and metrics. And if, especially the nice women, you can still be that giver and volunteer for these stretch assignments in order to get that promotion or that opportunity or build your resume, but be strategic, wouldn't you say?
I definitely would. I actually have an example of that. I was a program manager for a nonprofit at the time, and I was working my buns off. I felt like, I think I was probably working 70 hours a week, something like that. It was a lot of work, but my boss didn't recognize how much work I was doing. She couldn't see it. So what I did is I said, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do for the next 6 months. I don't know if I even set a time period, but I knew that I wanted for enough of a chunk of time until my next performance review. And I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm only going to do work on a daily basis that other people can see, because they couldn't see like the spreadsheets that I was creating and formulas that I was creating to like, the background stuff. But you know what they want to see? They want to see the data and the pivot table that you create. Like that's visible, right? So that's what I did. And the funny thing was, I was doing less. And my boss said to me like 6 months later, she's like, Jessica, you've just been so incredibly productive in ways that you never have been before. And I was thinking, I felt like it was such a slap in the face, because I really was doing less, but the work that I did, she could see. And because of that, it was recognized.
Mm-hmm.
So just because I was doing a lot of that behind the scenes, just because we do this behind the scenes work doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be recognized for it, that anybody will actually see it. Because sometimes it's kind of like that saying, nobody gets mad when the trains are running on time.
Mm-hmm.
You make the trains run on time. Nobody sees it. Nobody gets annoyed by it. And then the other thing is like, check your motivation. And what you were saying before about checking your bias around, like, I can't speak up, or I can't, like, that's not going to be rewarded in this workplace. I don't want to get in trouble, whatever. Is also check your motivation. What is your motivation for, I don't know. I'm even thinking of like how I used to do other people's dishes. This is so embarrassing, but I would do other people's dishes, and I felt like that was such a contribution. I'm making a contribution to this culture and the team, which did matter to me. So like the culture and the team was my motivation, but did it have to be expressed through doing other people's dishes and making sure that the kitchen was really well organized?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I could have expressed that in other ways.
Right. Unless you just like had a few minutes and you can't help yourself and you want to do it, but you're not going to be resentful about it, right? That's that sign and symptom.
Exactly.
There's absolutely, like, feel free to do things that just personally like kind of feed that itch, like, okay, I want to do this because I appreciate it and I don't care. And even Gayla put a comment like, accolades are not always everything. Getting that promotion's not everything, right? It's sometimes it's that internal satisfaction that will drive you. And that's a great point, because you can do it. We're not, of course, saying like, don't do any of these things, don't help out where it's not going to give you a result. But when it does create resentment, or it's having a sign and symptom of being toxic or not, or harming you more than helping you, then by all means, like, that's why we're talking today. It's like, how do you set those boundaries in a way that's healthy for you and others? And for women that want to transition into a different type of work or get promoted, or they have aspirations, yet they're constantly finding themselves in this scenario. The data is going to speak volumes. To your point, work smarter, not harder. Pick the most impactful pieces, because no one's going to promote you because you did the dishes.
Yes. And the other thing that I was hinting at before was about negotiating the yes. Is like, somebody coming to you to ask you for your time, your energy, your work output, whatever. And your inclination would be to say no because you have way too much on your plate and you feel taken advantage of. What if you were able to negotiate how you say yes? Like, I think that's a really interesting project, and I would love to dig in on this. What I want to be able to put my best foot forward with it. And I've got these other projects that kind of need to be tied up. Is there any way to maybe offload those to somebody else? Or perhaps that we can extend the time frame in which this needs to be done? Or what if you increase the budget? I feel like I can get closer to what you're looking for if we were to expand some of those things. So that feels more powerful than just kind of knee-jerk saying, no, I can't do that, I've got too much on my plate.
Another observation I've made a lot is that the same people tend to be the ones others go to because they will say yes, or because they're agreeable. And I've seen this too. Women are typically very brilliant at connecting the dots and seeing like who should be doing what, even logically. Like within the structure of the organization, it would make more sense if this person over here would do that. And then they go home, maybe to their partner or their friends, and they're complaining, like, why do they always ask me? This person over here should be doing it. Have you said that out loud to the person asking you? Have you actually mentioned that and brought it up in the workplace in a respectful manner, and asking the question or presenting it in a way? I found a lot of times people just didn't think outside their bubble or their box of who they were comfortable with. And so sometimes I had to just say, who would be great at that? Or I think that's a great idea. And you know who I think has the time to do that right now? And here's why I think that over here, and sometimes it would be somebody going, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that.
Sometimes to learn how to step out of the way is really, really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of that's an example of what you did there. Is like, you didn't need to meet that head on.
Mm-hmm.
You could just sort of pivot and allow that to just sort of like, pass you by without you feeling like you needed to step up or rescue or, be the champion of, the unsung hero. That's what I also think that we all are, in a lot of ways, are really unsung heroes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And there's a lot of amazing things about the people that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And because I think it's really important that we recognize how amazing we all are at being those people who can connect the dots, like you were talking about, who can intuit, who like people's motivations and kind of anticipate other people's moves before they do it, anticipate need before it becomes a problem. Like they can read people's micro expressions really well, very empathic, social cues, those kinds of things. Hard worker, you will do what needs to be done. You will not let other people fail. Don't you want this person on your team? I mean, you really do. But if you do have them on your team, or if you are that person, you have to understand like what you need to survive in that kind of, or to thrive in that kind of environment without burning yourself out, without completely depleting yourself, so that you actually have this energy to take on the impactful work.
Mm-hmm. So another, a big time that I've seen this happen with a lot of people is when the organization is in a leadership transition or a merger or a big change in the people, right? So the work pretty consistent. Like, here's what maybe you're in accounting or you're in the HR department, like the work is pretty consistent. And you find, like any family environment, any social construct, you find people end up in certain roles, right? And so someone who is this nice girl that we're talking about, their bucket might have been filled because they had people that appreciated, doing the dishes, or they you set up these structures culturally, right, with your niche. And then that gets disrupted. And all of a sudden, the resentment is not about the actual work. It's about the things you picked up along the way because of the people that you were working with. And so when that happens, this is where there's so many feelings that bubble up because it's so frustrating. A new leader comes in and all of a sudden they either say, don't do that, or they don't appreciate it like someone used to. And then you start getting resentful because maybe you're still doing it. Maybe you're still doing the dishes and nobody's noticing now. And now people are taking advantage of you, assuming you're going to do the dishes. So they leave a bigger mess, where in the past, those people you worked with were very respectful about it, right? So when we're at work, we've got to keep ourselves in check about, like you use the word impact, the impactful work around the actual work that's going on your resume. Always keep that in check and always make sure you are tracking that, because when it comes to that review, it's not going to be, now that you have a new boss, it's not going to be about those dishes that you were doing and how you're the life of the party and we love you and I'm going to give you woohoo, great review. Now it's really back to like the tactile work itself and the tasks.
I totally agree. I think, checking in with yourself about what it is that you want, I think is a difficult thing for us to do, because a lot of times our identities are kind of like tied into what we think other people want from us. And that's a difficult way to go about I guess the professional world. I've been there. I know it's not fun. But checking in about what it is that you want. Do you want something that your actions and your mindset is not supporting? Then those actions and mindsets will need to shift to be able to align with what it is that you want. Because it's like when there's a division or divide between your wants and like what is currently happening and what you're doing to get there, that causes a bit of struggle and conflict inside of ourselves.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. So having somebody like a coach or a mentor to really check those things, because sometimes we have those feelings, especially if you're an intuitive soul and you feel first.
Mm-hmm.
We have these feelings, and then we have to go, oh my gosh, am I even out of line here? Why am I having this feeling? Right. So being able to dissect it and look at the facts. I will also say, like, women are more apt to gossip in the workplace, and things like gossiping about the workroom or the coffee break room, right? If there's a kitchen or something, all of a sudden there's this chatter and this gossip has nothing to do with work, yet it can be so destructive to personalities and to relationships. So again, like checking ourselves and going, okay, what are the facts here? What can we boil down? That will help a lot, because then you can say, was that a bias of mine? Is there something, is that my problem? Is this something I should be upset about because someone is taking advantage of me? And like parsing that down, pulling, get the gossip out of there, get the rumors out of there when you're doing that work, and really look at the facts and the data.
Yeah. I think that's a smart thing to do in general, because you're going to at some point need to write a resume, and it's going to be good for you to really keep track of all of those things. Like if you find that the work that you're doing on a day-to-day basis does not feel like resume worthy, like it's not something that you feel like you would want to highlight or tout on your resume, or it'd be really difficult to do that because it doesn't have like a solid result or outcome. Think about, like, is that what I want? Do I want, to be able to have those facts that, I can call out in a resume or in an interview at some point in the future.
Yeah, such a good point. Or going to bat for your salary.
Yeah, I was thinking about how this is, being a nice girl will kind of impede us in certain areas in the job. And I think that we talked about on the job, but then there's also, how do you then communicate your value to a potential employer? And then when it comes time for that salary negotiation, will you ask for something? Will you try to negotiate? Or will you feel compelled and motivated by some kind of external reward, which is the other person's acceptance of you?
Right. Yep. So many people want to work in an organization that has a social impact, right? And nonprofits and areas where you do have to give a lot, and in return, you might not get the salary you would elsewhere because of the impact of the organization. That is very attractive to people that would label themselves as a nice person. Do you have any recommendations as people are looking for jobs or making a shift into an organization that aligns with them, how to make sure that they are also noticing where there might be red flags or boundaries they could set, anything around that kind of job search and looking for that right fit? What should they be looking for?
That's such a, I think that it's interesting. It's such a tough one because, especially if you are looking for a job that has a social impact, or say nonprofit, that kind of thing. Again, a lot of those people are the unsung heroes. And a lot of times you find yourself in cultures where everybody is burning the candle at both ends. So I would say now, like, where is your motivation? What is driving you? Is it intrinsic motivation? Like your personal satisfaction, your job well done, your, intended growth can be expressed through this kind of job? Or is it more that you're looking for the results and the data and the other kinds of external rewards? I think that if you're going to work in that kind of environment, try to suss out in the interview process what kind of culture we're looking at. Is it like everybody is depleted, nobody goes home at 5 o'clock, everybody is working nights and weekends, because you kind of have to keep up with other people's expectations. And so if you're the only one who's like, okay, well, I did my work for today, I'm going to go home. In some ways that can show other people that it doesn't have to be that way. But it may just not be the right environment for you. So I really do think no matter where you work, trying to locate those places that are a strong values connection, not just in what you believe in, like you believe that children shouldn't be hungry. Okay. I mean, we all believe that, right? However, how does that organization who's tackling childhood poverty, how are they functioning how are their values expressed in how they're functioning as an organization? I think that's what we really need to be remembering, because you're going to have to do that work every day. You're going to have to be there every day. You're going to have to be around, you're going to have to be within a culture that existed before you got there. And not to say that you can't influence culture in some way or can't influence your coworkers, but a lot of times that culture is really set at the top and it's kind of baked in, and there's unspoken rules about culture, and you just kind of find yourself being swayed by that. So being really clear about what kind of workplace you want is, I think I think that applies to pretty much anyone.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, a lot of people that I find are very kind-hearted are the ones that are frustrated and have done so much and don't feel appreciated. Say they want to find a culture in an organization where they will be appreciated and where they're surrounded kind of like rainbows and butterflies, right? We all want that. Yes. But when it boils down to it, their number one feedback to me when we start talking about leadership styles and what they appreciate is actually the harmony of the personality types, not having everyone passive, not having everybody, to your point, like a lot of times startups and nonprofits and social impact organizations, everyone is burning the candle at both ends because they have that same trait, which could be categorized like it's the nice girl thing. And then people burn out and they don't want to be in that environment long term. They actually want to be somewhere where somebody will set boundaries and help them set boundaries and be really frank with the work. So I think checking that too, of like, what kind of style in your boss are you looking for? If it's someone who's going to constantly only say the positive, I find that most people don't want that. They actually want someone with boundaries. So also to the nice girls out there, those of you that want to grow into leadership roles, finding ways to help your team set boundaries and setting that example is so key, because otherwise everyone's just going to be all of a sudden resentful behind their backs, right? Instead of having those conversations.
There's so much we can do. There's more we can do than we give ourselves credit for. It's really like checking those motivations, knowing that you do have a say, knowing that people want the best for you. If you were managing somebody and you didn't know what they needed to thrive, wouldn't you feel sort of frustrated by like, I don't really know what this person needs to thrive? If I had somebody reporting to me and they said to me, the best way for me the best way to get the most out of my work is this kind of thing. Like, this really works for me and I could really use this. I thrive on it. I'd be like, oh my gosh, thanks. I needed to know that about you. We have so much more power and say, I think, than we kind of think we do. And it's just really about how you go about communicating, how you sort of rely on relationships, how, the other thing too is asking for help and accepting help from others. That's a really powerful thing for us, because we kind of we have our value wrapped up in our worth is wrapped up in how much we do. And so if we think that we're the only ones who can do these things because our value and our worth is tied up with that, it's going to be really hard for us to ask for help. So, or to accept the help that's offered. So take yes for an answer sometimes in those cases, and see how much more powerful you like, how much the emotions kind of tend to soften a little bit around your workplace, knowing that you're not the only one that has to be ultimately responsible for everything. Empower others. Give them a chance and a space to do their best work and watch them blossom.
Right. It's okay to let go. It's okay not to pick up the rope or pick up the basket, whatever you're doing, right? It's okay to let other people also be the people pleaser, quite frankly. Yeah.
Could very well be.
I have another book recommendation that gives a lot of great phrases. She's also on Instagram. So it's Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nidra Glover Tawwab, Tawwab. What I love about this book is she gives you phrasing of what to say when you're trying to set boundaries. Yeah. And it's in all different facets of life, like, hey, to your parents, to your boss, like how to actually phrase it where you can feel confident and respected while you're doing it and not crossing that bitch line, right? Like, people don't want to be around me anymore.
Absolutely. The phrasing, repetition, learning how having those words come out of your mouth and practicing them in a safe environment first can really, really be helpful, because we're just so used to speaking in the way that we do. And we don't know that those are actually things that we can say, and it's okay. So practicing that in a safe space, a safe environment, and then trying little things here and there, like don't take on that extra meeting don't go to that meeting that you don't really need to be at. Just because you think you have to be there. That's one little thing that you can do. Wait an hour before you reply to an email. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I've worked with so many women who are just like so responsive. If they wait longer than 5 minutes to respond to an email, people are like, hello, what's going on? I haven't heard from you. Like, those are like the simplest things that you can do to just kind of give yourself a little bit of space and grace and not feel like you have to be pulled into other people's orbits so quickly. You can give yourself that time. I think that's like what I would want to leave people with, because I know that we're at time, right?
So we are. We could. I told you before this, we could talk all day. Here we go.
I know. This is a really good. I think that this is maybe a two-parter.
Yeah, totally.
We could probably pick up on this. And then, if there's other messages that are in the chat or other folks who have questions kind of coming into it, it'd be really great to address that.
Well, there's one other chat from Tanya. She says, yes, my manager consistently comes to me to see if I'll work the open shifts because he knows I hate to see my patients suffer. Yeah. So it sounds like a boss that kind of dangles this guilt carrot, right? So that you'll do the extra shifts or the extra work. And that would be a really good one, Tanya, to work on boundary statements and just having something at the ready and giving yourself, I think a lot of this is just giving ourselves permission and not worrying so much about what other people, we cannot control how other people will react to what we do. We can only control our own reactions, right?
Absolutely, for sure. And the one other thing, just really quickly to tie into what you just said, is to give yourself the time to really check in with yourself. Before, somebody comes to you with something, your knee-jerk reaction is to be like, oh, I feel so guilty if I don't take this on, or whatever it is. Take space to be with yourself, figure out what you really want, check in with your emotions, check in with your logic. Can I really take on this extra shift? Or will I be missing my kid's soccer game? Like that kind of thing. Then you can come back once you've done that, and you can have a counter offer, or you can say no, those kinds of things.
I love that. Okay. Before I let everyone go, I'm going to just quickly share my screen again to share how to get a hold of Jessica. And so, Jessica, do you want to talk about your website?
Yeah, just really quickly. You guys are the first people to see this website. I just want to say, because I've been in the process of launching this site for a few months now. If you want to talk, click on the Let's Talk. If you want to talk more about this, you can also click on the free consultation. You can email me, get in touch with me through LinkedIn. All of that contact information is just there on the site.
Awesome. Yeah.
You can even chat with me. I have a chat button I
Hey,
believe.
new chat
Yeah.
button on the new website. I love it.
Yeah.
We're unveiling Jessica's website today. Yes.
It's still a work. It's a work in progress, but I didn't want to give you guys my old site because that's going to be down probably in a few weeks. So
Awesome. So yes, please connect with Jessica, and we're both on LinkedIn all the time because we're career coaches. So feel free to send us messages, ask us questions. If you would like to see more conversation, more tips, and maybe we could get into some phrasing if we do this again. That would be great. Otherwise, in the meantime, check out the podcasts and books we mentioned and stay nice, but also take care of yourselves, I guess, is my message today. What about you, Jess?
Great note to leave on. And I mean, really, just to kind of drive home the message around what is your motivation. If you feel like you have no choice but to be nice, that's going to feel really uncomfortable, and your identity might suffer from that. So really just check in with yourself and your motivation, and give yourself that time and space to just figure out what you want, what you know you need to thrive. Yeah, that's all I would want to leave that at. But thank you so much for this opportunity to have this conversation. Like I said, I've just been just really looking forward to it. My mind has just been racing with so many thoughts about this topic, and I just can't wait to continue to dive into it later. So if you want to do this again, let me know.
Okay, I will. I love it. Thank you so much for your time, and everybody.